You want more of that juicy stuff. All of us do.
Mm.
And it's going to come in moments that you would have missed before. You're going to start receiving emotional nourishment from tiny little moments that you would have skipped over and not been present for. But because you're more in your heart, because you're more in your body, because you're paying attention to those signals, you're going to well up with gratitude in moments that completely knock you off your feet. The depth of beauty that I metabolize from my world and my human interactions and my non-human interactions are so beautiful. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I'm speaking with Claire, who's an intuitive emotional healing guide who's created a framework that transforms how we relate to our deepest feelings. What makes Claire's work so compelling is her journey from the sterile corridors of oncology massage therapy, where she held space for people facing mortality, to becoming someone who guides others through the underground rivers of their emotional landscape. Claire embodies the wounded healer archetype, someone who has walked through her own emotional underworld and emerged not just intact, but transformed into a guide for others, making that same treacherous journey. Claire, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'm happy to be here.
There's something about your story that suggests you were called into this work through what I would describe as a cosmic disruption, working with dying patients, experiencing anxiety attacks that landed you in emergency rooms. It's as if life kept presenting you with experiences that forced you to go deeper to find resources you didn't know you had. Take us back to those early moments when life was essentially breaking you open. What was happening in your world during those years with cancer patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I became a massage therapist in 2015, and in 2016, 2017, and the beginning of 2018, I worked in that bone marrow unit out in California in a major hospital. During that time, I kept finding that I was having conversations with people that I never would have anticipated. Here they are getting this cancer diagnosis. And on their first or second day in the hospital, here I come. I'm not a doctor. I'm just there to help them feel better. And I'm a person, treating them like a person. And I think of it as a ticking clock, like a clock that's ticking down. They've just gotten handed this awareness of their mortality. And if they're really willing to sit with that, to look at things that maybe they've been afraid to before, the conversations that I was finding myself having with people were around death and acceptance and what happens after we leave our bodies and how do we handle grief? What happens to our families when we go? Just really difficult stuff. I've always been a deep feeler. I've always been really interested in the human psyche and how we process our feelings. I just really sank into those conversations and I felt this deep desire to offer more to these people than just touch. Touch is a beautiful thing to offer, but I knew that my skill set included more. So I went to the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy and became a functional medicine health coach. One, to have a coaching background, but also when it comes to cancer treatment, there's so many lifestyle things that we can be doing to help our bodies heal. And I wanted to be able to offer those to people. I found during that time that people weren't really changing anything in their lifestyle. They weren't arriving to themselves in a new way until they were thinking and feeling about themselves in a different way. It was clear to me that the emotions were the place where we needed to go first to help people step into new lives, actual healing. That coaching background was really helpful for me. It helped me to learn how to have a back and forth that helps people to walk toward their growth and not away from it. So I'm really grateful for that training. But during that time, when I realized that people were really needing to focus on their emotions, I was going through my own stuff. As you mentioned, Peter, I was having anxiety attacks that were landing me in the ER. And I was dealing with my own grief at losing so many of my patients. I was really pushed during that time to look at my own ability to feel my feelings. That really sent me toward this work. But the pivotal moment that actually made me go, nope, I'm done with functional medicine health coaching. I need to be offering this emotional healing work in a real way was in the winter of 2020. That year was intense for all of us. And I found myself in December of 2020. I was living with my sister who I have been close with my whole life, her and her husband. And at that time, my nephews were 1 year old and 4. And they are just the lights of my life. They continue to be the lights of my life. I love those little boys. My sister and I had just arrived at a place in our relationship where we just needed some more space. It's normal in familial relationships to come together and grow apart and come together and grow apart. It was a difficult time for us to be realizing that we needed some more space. But she asked me in the first week of December 2020 to move out. I found myself living by myself in the middle of what we were all walking through at that time. Within a week, the person that I was head over heels in love with broke my heart, just walked away, decided that he couldn't do it anymore. So I found myself nursing this broken heart and felt blindsided by my sister asking me to move out. I just had all of this deep grief coming up. I was really struggling. We were right around Christmas. I'm a baker. I was like, all right, Claire, we're baking cookies. So I was baking sheets of sugar cookies and frosting them and putting candy on them. Then I was eating them. And I just started gaining quite a bit of weight. And I had this moment where I was like, Claire, you have all the resources, my dear. It's time to stop dabbling. It's time to actually arrive to yourself. That winter, I remembered Louise Hay, who I had found back in 2013. I found her mirror workbook. And it just so happened that the place I found myself, I was house sitting when I moved out of living with my sister. All of a sudden, I needed housing, and this beautiful 4 month house sitting gig landed in my lap. I'm in this house sitting in the front room, in the front entryway. They had a mirror. When I found myself wanting to eat another sheet of cookies, instead of doing that, I would put down whatever I was doing and walk over to that mirror. I would make eye contact with myself and see the pain on my own face and just witness my process. That really was the turning point for me. I stopped baking sheets of sugar cookies. I started actually arriving to my body, to my heart, and just my human in a new way. This intuitive emotional healing framework that I bring to all of you now is the process that I lived through in that winter and the process that I continue to live and practice every day. But it really started with my world getting so lonely and so isolated and my own mental health needing my attention. So, yeah, everything has evolved from there.
I want to circle back. You mentioned anxiety attacks so severe, they sent you to the ER. For many people, and possibly for yourself, that's terror at a cellular level. What was your relationship with fear? What was it teaching you about yourself?
Oh gosh. I didn't have an awareness that my brain could focus in different ways. I didn't realize that I was choosing what kind of consciousnesses I was participating in. So when fear came in, I believed it. And my fear circled around my body at that time because when I was working in the bone marrow unit, I saw all of these medical emergencies that I was not prepared for. That caused me to have a flavor of hypochondria, honestly, is how it manifested for me. I would have a strange pain in my body, or I would start to feel lightheaded, and my brain would start to build a story around that and spiral. I don't think I fully knew what was going on with me and fear until years later. I tiptoed my way out of those anxiety attacks. I had a therapist at the time who was so helpful. She was like, Claire, you have thousands of thoughts a day. You pay attention to some of them and you ignore a lot of them. Your anxious thoughts are just thoughts that you can pay attention to or not. She really normalized it for me. She made me feel less like I was crazy and helped me to notice that I had a mind. So that was really helpful. But my relationship with fear has changed a lot. I no longer believe fear when it comes in. When fear comes in, I now know that I'm just feeling vulnerable and there's something that needs my attention. So I don't play in that anymore. But I think we have to know that we have a mind that we have agency over before we can start untangle the tentacles of fear. Because when it comes in, it takes over if you believe it. It really takes a lot of practice and a lot of conscious awareness in order to unpack that.
This is where you turn your observer on, and that
Yeah.
takes practice. So you don't go from perception to story to conclusion. That happens in a nanosecond, and then you inject meaning into that story. That can lead to a slippery slope. You know what really strikes me about your journey is this pattern of being pushed to the very edge. Death work, your own health scares. It's like you are being initiated into becoming someone who could hold space for the impossible. There's something about people who do this deep emotional work Because what I've noticed is they seem to get called through crisis first. There's a hidden curriculum here because you've described this progression from massage therapy to health coaching to emotional healing. What interests me is what you discovered underneath the surface attempts to fix things. You realize people weren't healing unless they addressed the stories and emotions behind their habits. And that's a profound recognition that the real work isn't in the behavior change, it's in the invisible realm. What was it like when you realized that all the practical tools and strategies weren't enough? That moment where you saw people needed to go into the psychological underground.
For me, I don't know that it was conscious. I think what happened for me was when I had that fall apart in December of 2020, I had been doing Joe Dispenza's meditations for a year at that point. I knew I had energy in my body. I knew my thoughts were creating the way I thought about myself. I just started putting less emphasis on what my brain was saying and more emphasis on what was happening in my body. When I learned to really hold space for feelings in my body when they came up, they dissipated. I knew that I was on to something. I was feeling relief on the other side when I really let myself cry, when I really witnessed my own embodied emotional expressions. I'm finding relief and my brain is changing. I'm thinking differently. I'm not ending up in the ER anymore with those anxiety attacks. Anxiety doesn't win for me anymore because I'm in my body. There was a slow reorientation of me spending more time in my body and less time in my head in my sessions with people. That's what I was trying to walk them into. How can we get out of our heads and into our bodies? We talk about embodiment a lot in culture, but I don't think we really think about what that means when it comes to our feelings. We think about that as a practice that you click into and click out of. We can have embodiment practices, but the truth is, when I think about embodiment with our feelings, it's this idea that all of this information from the universe, from your world, from your higher self comes in the form of sensation in your body. If you are numb from the neck down because you are so stuck in your analytical mind, you miss so much data during the day that is leading you toward greater alignment, is leading you toward healing, that is leading you toward pain that you've been holding on to for a long time that's ready to go. We have to be able to spend more time in our bodies in order to get to those things where we miss those signals. I call this intuitive emotional healing because it's been a very intuitive process for me. If things arrive and I go, oh, that's what I'm doing, I do get pushed to my edges. I have been challenged with crisis after crisis in my life to really be able to hold all of this. For me, it's a lived, felt experience that I'm now trying to put words to. But it's also intuitive. This process is intuitive because your body leads the process. Your body brings up the sensation that is connected to the emotion and the healing that is ready to go. And every single person's body does that in a different order and does that slightly differently. So I feel like now I'm leading people back to their emotional landscape so they can notice their signals and read their own emotional language. It's been very organic. The whole thing has been quite an evolution. I feel like I've been along for a ride. I'm honored to be able to translate this language for all of us and help us understand it. It's been a journey of discovery for me the entire time.
It sounds like you've developed a relationship with your inner world, and that shifted as you started to recognize your emotions are energy as distinct from problems to solve. That means you move from pathology to process to catalyst and from comfort to capacity. When you do that, your intuition starts to fire. There's something about your work that feels like emotional archaeology. You're helping people excavate what's been buried. I'm curious about your own excavation process. What parts of yourself did you have to uncover to do this work?
Oh man, such a deep question. What parts of myself have I had to uncover? So much. One that I've been walking through more recently is just belief in myself throughout my life. As a deep feeler, as an empath, I have really wanted to keep other people comfortable and not make waves. As I've been stepping more into this work, I have really had to look at the parts of me that are fearful, that are not fully believing that I can do this. Not fully believing in yourself is a core wound, and we're really good at hiding those things from ourselves. Anything that is deeply excruciating for us Anything that we have a lot of fear around, you're going to pack that away and it's going to feel intangible. If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you I feel very confident in what I'm doing. I wasn't consciously not believing in myself. But I went through a breakup in January where my partner was more of the breadwinner than I was. And I found myself starting completely over in my work, in where I was living. And that, talk about crisis after crisis. Finding myself in a situation where I had to pull myself up and meet my own fears around supporting myself, that is really what got me in touch with my lack of belief in me. So we all carry beliefs that are underneath the surface. We're not consciously connected to the places where we're not feeling like we're enough, but all of us have them. Life pushes us in moments and we forget our worthiness. Every single human walking the planet, including every single healer and leader and person that we look to as an authority, has beliefs and difficulties, limitations about ourselves that we get to uncover in different moments. They arrive as sensation in our body. They arrive at that pit in your stomach, that fear, that anxious monologue that goes, can I do this? What's going to happen in the future because of what I'm going through right now? Can I actually do this? What will people say? When our brains start to kick in like that, it's our signal that there's a part of us that's feeling really tender and needs our attention. So for me, I go through this. I'm a human being. I'm going through this as well and uncovering these beliefs. The most beautiful part about it is that when you look at a part of you that feels excruciating and you hold loving space for it and you love that piece back into wholeness, you invite it back in, you tell yourself the truth of who you are, which is the opposite of the limiting belief. Relief comes in a deeper sense of self knowledge, and you actually arrive with more strength, with more sovereignty, with more confidence, with more of an ability to show up in your gift without feeling self conscious. It's this beautiful inner excavation that we do. I love that you asked me this question because I do think we have a perception that people who are leading us in healing work are somehow healed. I try really hard to make this work really human. We're all people. Anybody who's not willing to admit that they're working on stuff is not being honest with themselves or with us. If you're a human in a body, Jesus is not on the planet right now. Buddha is not on the planet. We do not have any enlightened healers that we know on the world stage. If you're still in a body, you're still going through it. There's still things for you to learn, things to uncover. That's a normal, natural part of being a person. It doesn't say anything about us or our worthiness that there's stuff left to uncover. The more we can normalize that process and the beauty within it, the easier this gets for all of us.
For me, beliefs are only necessary when knowledge is absent. When you start to have the visceral experience of your intuition, you have that knowledge. You don't need to believe in something. I do appreciate many people are walking around vertically unwell, where their subconscious is like a ball of string with knots in it. They try to undo one knot and find another knot without understanding what tied the knot in the first place.
Absolutely.
I see you as a teacher has emerged because in 2021, I believe, you mentioned a psychic telling you it was time to step fully into this work.
Yep.
I would contend this is about you stepping into your inner authority. But what also fascinates me about this is you describe yourself as someone who was waiting for an invitation.
Yeah.
That suggests a deep knowing about timing, about not forcing your emergence into the world, but rather allowing yourself to be called forward. So it's like you're the teacher who emerges through recognition as distinct from self promotion. What was brewing inside of you during those years of waiting? What was the internal process of becoming someone ready to guide others?
Yeah, that's a good question. So remember, this all started for me, and I really started applying what I intuitively had known for many years. I started doing that in December of 2020. In the spring of 2021, I met my former partner who I was with until this past January. And when I started bringing this framework to her, when I basically told her about the healing that I was doing, she was like, this is profound, Claire. No one's talking about this sort of internal work in the way that you are. You really need to start offering this to people But there's a part of you that goes, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a master's in this. I don't have a PhD. No one's going to listen to me. There was some self-doubt. There was some imposter syndrome that was coming in. So during that time, I learned about human design. In human design, I'm an emotional projector. The projector needs an invitation. That's like literally in the description of the projector. They need an invitation in order to feel free to come forward and bring their gift. During that time, my former partner had been working with this psychic, and I gave her permission to ask the psychic about my work. That's when it came through, when she was like, oh, yeah, midwinter, Claire's going to transition into offering healing work to help people heal their trauma. She thinks she needs to have a lot more put together before she can start doing that, but she should just start going. She has enough to get going now. And so just hearing that from someone who didn't know me at all and looked and saw the energy in my field, I believe so much in that. I have so much faith and trust when it comes to the support that I have from things we can't see. I really truly believe that I have a team that is with me, guiding me through my life. And so having her see that, for me, that was the only invitation that I needed. So I think she helped me to step into a little bit more confidence, to know that the 3D things that we put emphasis on in order to be a guide, or I don't think of myself as an authority because I feel like that word robs us of our innate ability to follow our own guidance. We should be our own authority. We shouldn't have authorities out there, right? That's what healing work is doing, is it's bringing us back to that inner voice in us that knows. But in order to be a guide, it was just really helpful for me to hear that from her. And I do feel like she gave me the courage to put myself out there. And so in the fall of 2021 is when I started offering this work. But again, as I was saying, throughout that entire time, I was getting to see pieces of me that still weren't fully valuing this work, still weren't fully seeing my place in the world as the guide that I am, as the intuitive healer that I am. I'm so grateful for this huge shakeup that I went through in January, for this huge heartbreak that I went through, because it really caused me to have to look at some of those deeper layers that hadn't come up yet. And I truly feel like I've crossed over into a new chapter where I am valuing and delighting in this work in a brand new way, in a deeper way than I ever have before. If ever there's a silver lining to the deep, hard stuff that we do, there is lightness that comes on the other side when you have the courage to finally face things that you haven't had courage to face before. And my life, my lived experience is that over and over again. It's like a forever deepening of my awareness of myself, of the love that I can hold for myself and others, and just my awareness of this experience. Every time we go into the depths, we come out with greater capacity. I love that you said moving from comfort to capacity. That's exactly what we're doing.
It's important to recognize you are the field collapsed into form. It's a question of reconnecting with that field, with that resonance. Within the form, we enter the great superstore of life. In the great superstore, there are all kinds of things. I think it's like something like 80,000 thoughts a day. You think of all the impressions that come in every single day, which takes you further and further away from the field. So you get busy trying to fire hose things or be productive. But when you go into the stillness and into the quietness of oneself, and I'm not talking about navel gazing here, I'm talking about conscious action. You start to recognize you are something much, much more than a psychology degree. If you look at the word degree by anagram, it's greed. I'm not poo-pooing degrees at all because it's a discipline, but it's the field saying to you, hey, listen, you need to be a harmonic. So
Yeah.
you start resonating and being a transmissive beacon of that field. You can be that agency of amplification that may emerge through crisis and experience all these wounds. But because you've had the visceral experience, it's not an academic pursuit or an academic perusal. You can now speak from your gifts because you've encountered and lived those wounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talk about helping people reconnect with their inner true north, I believe.
Yeah.
Was there anything obscuring yours? How did you discover your own?
I feel like it's this ever deepening process where we can see only what we can see from our awareness. We all have
Mhm.
blind spots that as human beings we can't see. So as you have curiosity about your own human experience, you start to see places where you have a story or you
Right.
have a sinking feeling of I'm not enough here or I'm not welcome in these circles or I don't feel good enough to X, Y, and Z. Like when you start to notice what your human experience is, you just start to come up against the little places in you that are dissonant. And so, our inner true north, let's talk about this from an energy perspective. All of the emotions have a different frequency. And the lower frequency emotions, the more dissonant ones that are harder for us to process, they have a latent frequency that is with us. Even though you're not feeling that feeling all of the time, it's in the field that is around your body. I love the study of the human biofield because it gives us a actual picture and understanding that we carry every suppressed emotion we've ever felt within 6 feet of our bodies. And it's organized chronologically based on when it happened to you. It's fascinating. When we dive into this and we realize I'm carrying every dissonant emotion I haven't been willing to feel, that means that all of these dissonant frequencies are stuck within our field and they're affecting our resting frequency. It's like you are a mixture, you are an average of all of the frequencies that you are carrying. So every single time one of those frequencies gets magnetized in from the field and comes into your body and creates a sensation, you get those feelings of grief. You get that buzz of anxiety. You get sensation in your body because of the emotion. You're getting an opportunity to clear that frequency from your field. When you clear that frequency from your field by having an embodied experience of it, actually moving it through, letting yourself cry, letting yourself feel that feeling competently, you then cleared some of that denser emotion and your latent resting frequency rises a little bit. So, not only this, but if we bring this back to the true north idea, you just cleared out some of the dissonance that was interfering with your guidance. When we're carrying around all of this trauma that we haven't cleared, we're not hearing our guidance clearly. We're reacting from a space of wound, from a space of unprocessed trauma. So, as we clear out these old stagnant energies that are in our field, we hear our guidance more clearly. We're connected to ourselves more of the time. It's easier to follow what our internal guidance is telling us because it's more accurate. So, it's an ever deepening process. The more aware that I get of my own blind spots, feel into them and clear them, the less I'm controlled by those blind spots, the less those behaviors show up in my life.
This is a huge study into the electromagnetics of the human and its auric field. The way I describe it is a bit like having a white sheet on a line and then you throw soot on it. And you don't become electrically clean, you become magnetically dirty. It's cleaning up those electrics in
Yep.
your auric field. There's something profound about teachers who don't rush into teaching, who wait until they're genuinely called. It suggests a completely different relationship with authority and wisdom. And I'm talking about inner authority here. What was your relationship with your inner authority? What was it like before you stepped into this role?
I think it was pretty wounded, to be honest. I've always been a leader, I've always been a public speaker. I used to plan and run all of the assemblies for my high school. Like I would get up and talk in front of rooms full of people. I was a drama kid. I did a cappella in college. I've always been in front of audiences, but it was from a place of being terrified before doing that and questioning what everyone thought after I was done. And so there was so much self-doubt that was a part of this. Also, I'm a middle child. There are 4 kids in my family. So I had a big family and I have 20 cousins. I came from a large family. As I said earlier, there was some imposter syndrome that came up in me. I really had to sit with myself and I needed to give myself distance between the pressure that I was putting on myself and the reality of what was actually happening. The reality of what was actually happening was I was sitting with people in a one-on-one setting and I was just sharing my lived experience, and people were having profound awarenesses about themselves. So, in a one-to-one kind of setting, which is where I've always shined in that, I don't do well in groups of people where everyone needs to have a conversation. There are 15 people around the table. I'm probably going to be a little bit more quiet. If it's me and one or two other people, oh, I get deep into sharing and listening and exploring. It's always more comfortable for me in smaller settings. So, one on one with people, I was finding that people were really learning about themselves by listening to what I was offering. I think that over time, the repetition of seeing, Claire, when you get out of your own way, people grow and you connect, and this is beautiful. That was what really helped me to make friends with that inner authority and trust her and grieve the pieces of me that was doubting that. Grief is such a big part of this process for us. When we see pieces of ourselves that have been feeling really small, that haven't been feeling strong, and we allow ourselves to grieve that we've been living in that limitation, we naturally start to step into more of that strength and more of that inner knowing. Once you have that inner knowing, it doesn't feel good to not follow it. You want to follow it, you lean into it. It was just an evolution for me. As I was
Mm,
saying, like this whole thing I've just been living and translating into words after. So I don't even know that I was aware that I had a relationship with my inner authority. But now looking back, I can see what a process it's been to make friends with that.
beautiful. Your approach, you describe it as, I believe, body led and soul deep. And you talk about the body deciding what's ready to heal and in what order. This is quite a departure from mind-driven healing approaches. I would suggest that you've learned to trust something that most people are taught to override. That is the body's intelligence, its innate intelligence about what it needs. How did you learn to trust the body's timing, and what had to shift in you to stop trying to control the healing process?
Yeah, so it was a felt experience for me. I had been doing Joe Dispenza's meditations for a year when everything fell apart and this came to a head for me. That process of meditating and feeling into my body, I love Joe's work because he takes you through the different parts of your body and your different energy centers. As you go through each energy center, you get to focus on what it feels like in that area. Even just the practice of doing that sort of meditation is really helpful in connecting to the different sensations in your body. So I had that on board when I started this work. So when I really slowed down and I found myself in front of the mirror and I was feeling something deeply, what I was doing was paying less attention to what my brain was saying and I was paying more attention to what my human was feeling because I was seeing the pain on her face in the mirror. I was feeling the weight in her chest. I could feel her energy. I talk out loud to myself into a voice recorder or into the mirror. That's such a helpful process to like really begin to metabolize the thoughts and feelings that we're having. So when I would speak out loud to myself in front of the mirror during that time, I was hearing my word choice, I was hearing my tone, I was getting so much information from my human. It's the same information you get when you're sitting with another person who's having a hard time. You're just like, you're taking in their energy and their facial expression and you're hearing their words and their tone. Like we take in so much energy or information from other people when they're talking to us that helps us to connect and have empathy for them. When you're doing that, you have to be really present. You can't be in your head chewing on what they're saying. You've got to be actually absorbing and connecting to what's happening in them. And so that process I started doing with myself. I started connecting in with myself, paying more attention to the sensation in my body. The more that I did that, the more blatant it became. What was happening in my brain was a distraction. So it really was just a gradual process of me coming down and believing, paying more attention to the sensation in my body because that's true 100% of the time. Your sensations don't lie to you, they tell you what is happening. Your brain does lie to you. So, really understanding the difference between those and living it, feeling that sensation and feeling it clear when I was able to actually witness it was such a game changer for me.
There was a beautiful saying, you say emotions are signals lovingly arising to get our attention. That's a radically different relationship with difficult emotions, I would suggest that most people have. How did
Yeah.
you develop that perspective?
I think the way I understand this human experience is that we are here to be free. We're here to be fully expressed. We're here to create differently than other people. Every single one of us has a different mission. We have different gifts. We have different lived experiences. What happens is you realize that your path is going to unfold 1 second at a time as you continue to walk through your life. I've always had that kind of feel about this, but it's definitely deepened in the last 5 years. When you bring the emotions into it and you recognize that they're energy and that we are energetic beings having this experience, it just became obvious to me that your emotions are just here to get your attention when you're not in alignment with what you're here to do or how you are to be treated, what you deserve. Your dissonant emotions come in to get your attention because you really care about what's happening and something greater is available. It was just a natural progression for me. And so much of this work just comes and lands in my brain, and I start speaking it out loud, and I realize that I'm saying something I've never said before. I've been called claircognizant, and I don't fully even understand what that means, but I've been told that. Knowledge just arrives in my brain, and thoughts organize themselves to express this work. I feel like a channel for emotional translation for the humans and moments. All of this, I just started to experience my own dissonant emotion as this invitation to see where my human heart was hurting. I break up emotions into two categories: tender feeling, which is where all of our healing waits for us, all of that alchemization that's beautiful, that's going to clear that frequency. It's all housed in that tender emotion. But the other category of emotional experiences is resistance to tender feeling. And
Mm.
when we have resistance to it, we're just basically going, I don't want to feel this. I don't feel safe to feel this. So I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be resentful. I'm going to blame. I'm going to judge. I'm going to numb out and be apathetic. I'm going to resist actually feeling the tender thing. When I noticed that when those dissonant emotions would come in, they were just covering a place where my human was really hurting and needing my support, it became obvious that they are this loving flag to go, human, your heart is hurting. Every single time you feel pissed off, every single time you feel anxious, you feel fearful, you feel any sort of charged emotional experience in your body that is aimed out at your environment, at somebody else, every single time that's happening, a part of you needs your attention. So it's a loving invitation every time we get triggered to come back to ourselves and go, human, where do you need some support? Where do you need me to hold some space so that you can feel something through so that this doesn't need to win? That's how I understand them. That's how they've settled in for me over the years.
What you're describing to me is when things come through the field into your form, because of the work you've been doing, and because it's authentic, and because it's pure and it's genuine, and all the trials and tribulations you've been through, you become an agency of amplification whereby you are able, even if it's unconscious, you set up an ever ready media that allows two-way traffic to happen so that what can come through from the ethereal can then ground itself in the material.
Yeah.
The way that shows up is you speak it out.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
it can be a bit like, where the hell did that come from?
Sometimes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What you're also describing, you're describing the language of the body's deeper knowing. And I'm curious about the translation process. How do you help people who are completely disconnected from that language? How do you help them start to understand what their body is telling them?
Yeah. The heightened moments where you're triggered, that's not the moment to start learning to listen to your body because you've already been hijacked. So, the most practical thing that we can do, I really start people with two different things. The first one is if you need to feel something in your body, but you have judgment of the feeling, you have judgment of yourself, or you have judgment of the situation, you're not going to feel that thing. Because one, you're probably not going to feel safe to feel it, and you're going to get distracted. So, noticing your judgment of your emotional experiences and starting to work with that is really helpful. Just normalizing that being a human being includes feeling deeply. It's a very normal part of our human experience. That's really important. But on a more practical felt sense level, one of the very first things that I do with people is I invite them to start spending more time in their body in the moments in between that are smaller where they're not triggered. When you're doing the dishes, when you're walking the dog, when you're driving a car, it doesn't matter. You can be doing literally anything. You can be having a conversation with another person. But while you're doing that, you can divide your attention, take a deep breath, and just go, how does my heart feel right now? How does my first center, my pelvis feel? How does my third center, my solar plexus feel? Like just check in with your body and feel the sensation in there. If you start doing that throughout the day when you're not feeling triggered and you just start to notice what's happening in your body, you're going to start to notice that the sensation in your body changes quite a bit. So that's the first step is just going, can I even notice that I'm having sensations in my body? That I've got tension in my shoulders, that I've got heaviness in my chest, that I've got my stomach's in knots. Can I notice those literal sensations? When we're good at that, the next step is to go, what emotions am I feeling while I'm feeling this sensation? Is there an emotion that I can detect? So when you start asking yourself what that emotion is, you're connecting the literal sensation in your body to the emotional experience that you're having, so that in another moment, when that sensation comes up, you're more likely to recognize that an emotion is arising. And we deepen it from there. But you can see it's starting to build an awareness of the changes that are happening in your body so you can notice when your emotions are trying to get your attention. When we don't have practice with this, your brain comes in and starts telling you a story to move you away from the emotion, and you're not going to get there. All of us are good at pushing emotions down. Every single one of us. We're good at finding the solution, rationalizing it, focusing on why it's happening or who's to blame. So that moves us away from the actual experience that we need to have to move the emotion through. So when we pause and we just start to notice the sensation and the emotion that's happening, we start to give ourselves the opportunity to interrupt our brain from taking us away from the emotion when it comes in.
The work that you do is incredible because you're working with people who are anxious, depressed, numb, lacking meaning. These are not small challenges. These are existential struggles that make people feel like they're drowning. There's something I see about your work that seems to meet people in their deepest despair and somehow find portals or doorways there. You have this ability to work with structure and discipline through the most challenging psychological terrain. What do you do when someone comes to you completely convinced they're broken beyond repair? How do you work with that level of hopelessness?
If someone's walking in my door or arriving to my work in any capacity, they're hungry for something to be different. Someone who's hopeless doesn't seek out help. So that's the first thing that's important. We have to be willing to try something new and see ourselves differently if we're going to heal. When people arrive to me in that place, the very first thing, I have a community called the Conscious Heart Academy, and in there I have a resource library. I have an hour and a half long presentation that's called Rehumanizing Yourself. That whole presentation is aimed at helping us remember that every single human being that is walking the planet has beautiful things about them, natural gifts, things they're naturally good at, ways that they're here to express themselves. They have a unique, beautiful way of being in the world. They have things that are endearing about them, things that are funny or fun, things that help them to connect to other people easily. But then at the same time, every single human walking the planet also has habits and behaviors that cause friction for them and people around them in their lives. They have blind spots. They have places where there is growth that's available. They have things that they're struggling with. And so every single human either displays or hides these. We don't all show our dysfunction at the same level. So it can feel like there are people who've got it figured out. But I really try hard to normalize with people. It's like, I was saying this sort of earlier. It's like you're a person. Every single person is having a hard time on a certain day. All of us come up against our brains and our limitation in different moments. And so that's a normal part of the human experience. So I try really hard to normalize that. But then another huge piece of this and really helping us reorient the way that we're holding ourselves so that we can do deep work is to remember there is no human that arrived to a family that did not cause them some sort of trauma. Every human goes through little traumas. Maybe you didn't have big deaths in your life. Maybe you didn't have terrible abuse that happened, but you had moments where people averted their eyes when you were speaking. You had moments where people dismissed how you were feeling. You had moments where you had a need and it went unmet. It's a normal part of being a person. So as we grow up, depending on the group of people you arrived to, you have different sets of traumas. You have different hurts and pains that you're carrying around. And again, that's normal. I think honestly, if we go to incarnation and sort of the existential part of this, I think that's why we come here. We come here to experience the separation so we can find our way back because there's such a beautiful depth of discovery that happens during that process. So I try really hard to normalize with people. If you're struggling with stuff, you're a person. Let's reframe it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just now ready to be rid of the things that are causing you this incredible pain. The only way for us to actually begin to move in a direction that dissolves the pain is for us to shine a light on it, make it okay, decide that it's not a problem, and then find love for our human as they walk through that muddy area. So I try really hard to make this all really gentle. We're so hard on ourselves. And if you're already self aware, but you use that self awareness to tear yourself apart, try really hard to reorient us. Because remember, we all have those endearing things and those gifts and those ways of being in the world that are beautiful too. And so many of us miss those. So we've got to find a way in our brain to normalize our experience, balance out that deficit and that acknowledgement so that we're seeing ourselves in a 360 kind of way that's loving and kind. And then we have to be willing to start teasing apart the things that feel sticky. So I try hard to meet people where they are, but as I was saying before, it really does start with your sensation, which is very simple. Everybody has sensations in their body. Can you just normalize that your emotion's going to come in the form of sensation? And then can you just not mentally run from the sensation? Can you just stay in your body with it for a little while? And then we build from there.
Beautiful. You also mentioned helping people remember they're not their trauma or their to-do list or their tired nervous system. They're actually a point of awareness with a human body, a soul here to grow. For many, that's a profound reframe, not for you and I, but for many others or people who may be listening. It suggests that your work goes beyond psychology into something much more existential about helping people remember who they actually are or what they can become. You're the evolutionary teacher who helps expand consciousness and identity. My question is, how do you help someone who's completely identified with their problems recognize that there's something larger observing those problems?
People have to be willing to click into that. Someone
Mm,
who has decided they are stuck in the life that they have is not going to be a match for my work. When we decide we are trapped and we're not willing to see it in a different way, we're going to stay where we are. Like your life needs to get a little bit more on fire before you're going to be ready to
right.
step into that. So I always say we don't get to know if people come with us. We have to meet
Mm,
people where they are and allow their point of consciousness to be perfectly on time, perfectly learning whatever they need to learn, and know that if they're going to grow and come along, they will. But if someone is willing and someone is going, okay, I have been over identified with my problems, I have been believing this, and they're willing to soften, I think everything I just said applies. When we start to
yeah.
have curiosity, even if people don't have the sort of belief system that I do, where I truly believe that we're infinite beings that are having a very temporary human experience. I believe that everything we walk through is perfect for us, including the difficult stuff. And when I look at every trauma that I have as being perfect for me in what I'm stepping into, as far as my strength, as far as my self knowledge, as far as my need for freedom and full expression, when every trauma that I have, I view as making me more aware of where I'm not experiencing those things yet, then I find an opportunity to grow in every single thing that happens to me. When someone doesn't have that belief system, something beautiful that I've been noticing recently as I've been stepping more into my own belief and confidence in this work, as I was talking about, that's been happening for me since January, is people don't have to have that belief system in order to step into
Yeah.
this. The truth of it is that every single human being is going to go through hardship because it's part of it. And our hardship looks different depending on where we're born. There are people that spend their entire lives looking for their next meal and being present in between. It's like they live in survival for most of their lives. There isn't a single day where thinking about where their food is coming is not part of their experience. That's still a valuable human incarnation. That person is still learning. That person is still experiencing love and connection and loneliness and grief and all of the things that we're experiencing. But their day-to-day lives look different. If we decide that our human experience has to look like a certain thing in order to be valuable, we're forgetting the depth of learning that we're here to do. So you don't even need to believe that you come and do this 1,000 times. You don't need to believe that there's something that happens after we die. All you need to do is look around at the other human beings and go, there's value to every single human experience that we're having. Every single human can step into greater self-awareness, can step into greater love. Every single one of us can rise above our circumstances should we focus our awareness on that. Human resilience and the creativity of the human heart and the way that we go through life, there's inspiration everywhere should you choose to look at it, but you have to normalize yourself as a human that is a part of that collection. You are also valuable regardless of what your experience is. So we've got to include ourselves. I always say, give yourself an equal seat at the table. Your human experience is just as valid as anybody else's, regardless of what your pain or your strengths look like. So if we can just step into that and go, there's growth for me, there's greater awareness, there's greater love in every single thing I experience. Can I start to open my awareness to that possibility? There's just a depth of healing and connection and fulfillment and meaning that we can't even imagine. But you have to be willing to open your brain that way.
Totally resonate. And I'm getting the sense your work seems to create evolutionary ripples. A sense you're not just helping people heal, but you're helping them become the kind of people who can hold space for others to heal.
Yeah.
There's something about emotional competence that seems to naturally want to serve others. And you have an evolutionary trajectory that is towards creative self expression and leadership. What do you notice happening in someone's relationships and impact on others as they develop this emotional competence?
It's a great question. It's so beautiful to watch in other people. It's so beautiful. I have some folks who've really struggled with relationships with their children. And as they've been doing this work, I'm watching them, one, have more acceptance for themselves as parents, to know that they did their very best with the information they had at the time and stop beating on themselves for what they walked through with their kids. I'm also watching in these examples, I'm watching these parents hold more space for their children now that they're holding space for themselves. And some of those kids are leaning in, which is really sweet. So when we start to hold space for ourselves, have presence with our own emotions, we now have space for other people's emotions and presence with them. We're not trying to rush anybody through their experience. It's not a problem that they're feeling something. You just normal. It becomes a normal part of relationships. And when you offer that to another person, it's surprising to a lot of folks because we don't experience it very often. Most people want to cheer us up or solve the problem or distract us from the thing, or they judge us for what we're feeling. So when you have such presence with yourself that none of your feelings are a problem, when someone else comes in and they're really struggling, they finally have a safe place to land in you and it feels different. I can't tell you how many people over the years have told me that I feel like a completely different person than I used to be, that I have a sense of presence and depth that I did not display before. I used to call my parents every couple of days in tears before, like before 5 years ago, really struggling with something and needing them to listen to me and help me sort through my brain. I don't do that anymore. I still call and talk to my parents. They know what's going on, but I have so much more resilience. I don't need that outer space anymore. And when they're having a hard time, I have space for them. So this absolutely does have a ripple out effect. It is absolutely breathtaking what happens in our relationships. There's a deepening that is available in all of them. Now, even though we arrive with a new depth and with a new ability to hold other people as we do this for ourselves, not everybody is going to respond to that invitation by leaning in. Some people pull away. Some people can't handle that, or it doesn't feel safe to them and they have to figure it out. And this is where it's so amazing that we have a depth of relationship with ourselves where we can hold ourselves when we're having a hard time, because part of this healing process is a winnowing, a sorting that happens. When I talk about this with folks, I talk about it as being the football stadium. It's like when you start doing healing work, everybody gets up and it's time to shuffle seats. People, they come down to the front and they want to be in the front row and they never were that close before. And you're like, sweet, this is so cool. You've never been this close. And then other people, some people leave the stadium entirely. They're like, I'm not here for this game anymore. Other folks retreat up into the upper balcony area and they're watching, but they're staying away for a little while, but then they slowly start to make their way back down. So they come down to the front again. And there's just this movement where people are trying to figure out where they need to sit. When we have peace with that process and we trust that process and we trust that the people who are can meet us at our authenticity, can meet us at the sovereign place that we're stepping into, they're going to come down to the front and you're going to have a depth of connection with them that you never had before. It's going to be so sweet. And the people who leave, we just have to go, if they're meant to be in this with me, they're going to come back in the stadium or they're going to come back down out of the nosebleeds at some point. And I'm going to love them where they are, but I'm going to let them move as they need to move. So we have to allow and expect that there's going to be a shuffle as we do this, but it's all part of the divine design.
Love that analogy. How has doing this work changed your own capacity to be present with life's difficulties or challenges?
Oh, it's so different. I'm not in the emergency room ever with anxiety attacks. I certainly am a human, so anxiety does come in, but I know how to work with it now. I know how to look underneath that fear and that charge for the part of me that needs support. I literally feel like anything could happen in my life. I could go through any sort of loss, any sort of tragedy, and I know that I have myself. I know that my emotions are temporary. I know that I'm going to grow from whatever happens to me. I know that my feelings are just sensation in my body, and if I can have presence with them, they're not going to win. They're not going to control me. I certainly don't want to go through loss. I certainly don't want to lose any major parts of my life or humans, but I know that that's a natural part of this process. Loss and change is a natural part of this process. And I know now, after 5 years of doing this work, that my human is resilient and she's really present. And so I don't have any of the mental health stuff I used to have. That's why I feel so passionate about bringing this to other people, because this is really simple. Slow down and feel your feelings. Just stop running from them. I can help you quiet your brain so that you can be present with your feelings. I can help you get back into your body so that you can cry. I can literally coach you through crying. That's part of my work. Let's get you back connected to your tears. I can help you reframe the way you look at yourself and the world. I can help you explore what your belief system is. We can get you reoriented so that you can step into the same resilience and sovereignty that I've found. I'm watching this happen over and over again with my clients and with the people that are close in my life who are implementing this. We're all changing. The depth of presence in every single person I know who is implementing this, it is astounding. We deserve meaning and connection in this life. We deserve fulfillment. And if you're not willing to sit with your feelings, if you're not willing to have that embodied expression, you're missing a lot of it. You may still have some level of fulfillment and meaning in your life, but you have no idea what is available to you until you really sink into yourself. And I want that for us. The world would be such a different place if people weren't running from their feelings. We would have a completely different reality on this planet. So that's what I want for us.
There's something about people who learn to be with their own depths. They become capable for holding space for depths in others that they couldn't hold before.
Yeah.
What do you think that teaches us about healing in general?
It's the all access pass. All the juicy stuff in life that we love comes with deep feeling. You think about moments in your life that have meant something to you, like the arrival of a baby in your life, a promotion, the completion of a big job, the reaching of a goal, starting a new relationship, making a deep commitment to another person by getting married or buying a house or whatever. When we have these moments where we will always remember it because it meant so much to us, it's a moment where deep feeling was available. Over time, when we don't attend to these smaller traumas and these little pain points that we carry throughout our lives, we start numbing that beautiful stuff too. Brene Brown talks about this. We don't numb the difficult emotions without also numbing the good ones. And when we normalize, the deep feeling is going to come in. If you're in a body, you're going to experience challenge because you're still a human on this planet, in this very dynamic light and dark place that we all inhabit. And so challenge is going to come in. So if you can normalize that and really learn to lean into those signals that you're getting from your emotions and alchemize them, you're going to have this beautiful existence that includes all this juicy stuff that you want more of, regardless of whether or not you're going to admit it. You want more of that juicy stuff. All of us do.
Mm.
And it's going to come in moments that you would have missed before. You're going to start receiving emotional nourishment from tiny little moments that you would have skipped over and not been present for. But because you're more in your heart, because you're more in your body, because you're paying attention to those signals, you're going to well up with gratitude in moments that completely knock you off your feet. The
Mm.
depth of beauty that I metabolize from my world and my human interactions and my non-human interactions are so beautiful. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
When people want to find out more about your work, how do they find you? And do you have any passing words?
Yeah, so intuitiveemotionalhealing.com is my website. And there are really two good ways to dive into this work. One is through a one on one, which looks similar to talk therapy at first, but obviously the orientation is what are the feelings underneath and how do we get you more connected to those? What are the barriers that are keeping you from feeling? So I can teach in a one on one setting with folks. But the sweetest way, I think, and the easiest way, and certainly the most cost effective way to learn this is to join my online classroom and community, the Conscious Heart Academy, which is a little community that's housed on Mighty Networks. I host 6 monthly Zoom events on there, Q&As. I have a session that's called Work Through It, where people bring situations that are really sticky that they've tried to work through on their own and only gotten so far. So they bring them to the group, they tell us what's going on, and I help them work through it the rest of the way. Everybody loves that session because we get to relate to each other's stories and you get to learn about each other, which is so sweet. So that community is wonderful. I have a resource library in there with step-by-step videos, reflective worksheets, practices, just any kind of resource that you can imagine to help you really bring this work home and apply it in your day-to-day life. So intuitiveemotionalhealing.com is a really good place to come. I think as far as closing words, the thing that I always just like to remind people of is that you get to be a person. Like, really notice where you're making yourself a problem, where you're diminishing your own experience, where you're abandoning your own needs because someone else's need feels greater. Start to notice how you're treating your human. Our lives start to change, emotional landscapes start to change when we start noticing the ways that we neglect ourselves. You have infinitely more to give other people. You have infinite access to more creativity and love and support for others when you offer that love and support to yourself. It really is so important for us to fill our own cup first and understand how we're not filling our cup. So many of us aren't even aware that we're self abandoning on a daily basis. So, really stopping to direct your self awareness and your inquiry, your curiosity at your own human experience is such a game changer in really truly arriving to our communities in a new way. So, let yourself be a person. Remind yourself that we're all struggling in moments, we're all having a hard time, and you deserve just as much love and connection and safety and fulfillment and joy and creativity as the next person.
What you represent is this beautiful integration of healer and teacher. You're someone who's learned to transform crisis into curriculum, not only for yourself, but for others. I see that's the mark of someone who's learned to work with life as distinct from against it, to see even the most difficult experiences as somehow serving one's evolution. So I want to thank you so much for
You,
your
Peter.
honesty and your insights. It's been an honor and privilege to conduct this with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. It's been lovely to be here.